Good afternoon, conference, and thank you for hearing this motion. I'd like to flag at the outset that some of what I will discuss will touch on issues of suicide and the effects of trauma and abuse, so please do you need to keep yourself safe. I've always been a Liberal Democrat, but it's the lack of reform of care that has pushed me to stand for election last year as a candidate in Lothian East and hopefully next on the list for the south of Scotland. But why does the reform of care drive me? For that, I need to return to when I was 18 and a volunteer in a camp in a field in the north of Perthshire for children who are in the care system. These are kids who are in foster care, residential or children's homes, or what you might know as kinship care, being looked after by extended family or engaged with a social worker. On this campsite, we had about 25 kids aged about 11 to 13. Imagine if you were at a big field, down one side of it, big old scout tents, and behind them trees and a river to the side. I walked down there as a fairly green, naive volunteer, and in the tree, sat in the branches, was a boy called Johnny, but Johnny had no trousers or pants on. Johnny was sat in this tree, and I went, jinx, he's got to come down out of there, it doesn't look very safe. Johnny, come down out the tree. Johnny, in no uncertain terms, told me to sod off. We carried on for a while, not getting very far, so I changed tack. Johnny, why is up the tree with no pants on? And Johnny eventually delivered the immortal line, I'm waiting for Bob to come out of the tent so I can do a jobby on his heat. These kids were brilliant. We managed to catch 3 sheep and stuff them in one of the other volunteers' Ford Fiesta. I was born on a farm. You can't do that without a dog or a crummock or a fence to work with. They had ingenuity, entrepreneurialism and a spirit that, it was just great to see. But there's also another kid there, Peter. He didn't engage, he was more aloof, and eventually went home early, much to my regret. 2 weeks after that camp ended, Mary, the leader of that camp, rang me up, and she said, I have some sad news. Peter's completed suicide, he's dead. Peter was 13. How was that possible? It took me till I was in my 30s till I could comprehend and understand what was happening when I started working more with people leaving the care system and care system reform. Derek McGill, the governor of Pullman Young Offenders Institute, then told me he reckoned 80% the young men he had incarcerated in his institution were care experienced. They make up 1.5% of our young population. How is that possible? Even today, for adult offenders, at least a quarter, over 2,000 are care experienced. A third of our street homeless will be care experienced. Why is this? Well, half will leave care with a significant mental health problem. They're 6 times more likely to be excluded from school, twice as likely to leave with no qualifications. There's a 500% chance they're more likely to die prematurely. This is our nation's shame. Yet it is not inevitable. I've worked with thousands of care experienced people. It does not need to be the case. The statistics are bleak because too often care experienced people are left from a system with low self-esteem, low sense of self-worth, and do not believe they belong or are connected or are indeed even lovable. This has a significant impact on mental health. And too quickly as a society, we go from failing to love them to judging them, to ostracizing and labeling them when they numb their pain with drink and drugs, to then locking them up when that pain turns to frustration and anger. And worst of all, we blame them when they dare to attempt or complete suicide. 8 years ago, or half a childhood ago, I and other campaigners made this a priority for the Scottish Government and First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. They guaranteed this would be as high a priority as climate change and independence for their government. They created a care review, they created the promise, and we had numerous reports and PR from that. But we are still to have an action plan that says what must start or stop, who is responsible for making it happen, when it should happen by, and how much it should cost. It is literally the definition of governmental long grass, but this has life-limiting consequences for our children in care. Oh, lost my page. But, conference, there is hope. I have led and advised care experience reviews for care system reform in New Zealand and the government there, and in Whitehall and Westminster too. And the reason we have to have hope is that it links to Liberal Democrat values and localism, compassion and connectedness. I ran a charity called Who Cares Scotland for nearly 10 years, and that must have heard over 20,000 advocacy cases. The solution from those children is simple and straightforward. Do care with us. That means in familiar places and with people we care about. And judge our care system on one feature: how well it equips me with a lifetime loving relationship. For what does this look like? Well, for them it was obvious when someone went above and beyond a job description. A sports coach who bought them new boots, a teacher who would wash their clothes or buy new ones for them, a family who'd have them in for their tea, or a neighbour who'd let them play with their kids. Why, for most children, doesn't their care experience begin and end with people like this? These are the people children and their birth families already know and they trust. This is where stability lies. So for this to happen, what do we need to do? We need to relentlessly engage the public, educate them, give them permission and compel them to release the compassion I believe that they hold to care for our kids. We have to have a universal, non-judgmental offer of support to families who are in need of help in every single community. This is what early intervention should actually look like, not just a rhetoric around it. For care experienced people, we have to secure their rights as a group our society has failed for too long, and protect care experience as a protected characteristic in UK legislation. But we also need to be clear where we have failed as a system. And in this, we have to look at institutional care. It is not designed to give children lifelong loving relationship if you have over 20 to 30 staff members on a staff rota. Yet we have over 1,300 kids in that today, including last week a 5-year-old was placed in that, at a cost of nearly £250 million a year. How is this possible? It must end in its current form. To do this, we need leadership and a roadmap to lead us to tangible improvements. The promise is too dilute. It is not galvanised action on the scale required. At best, it is incrementalism. We need radical action and a reboot with clear, time-bound and costed plan so everybody can see the role and delivery of this. I raise this motion today because we lost too many, too young. And I don't think we act as though their lives have the same value as others. I returned to that campsite with other kids from care for the 6 years preceding COVID. And for every year since, I have buried a child who attended those camps. How is this possible in a developed nation like Scotland today? My voluntary work is now supporting a few determined characters who are setting up a site of remembrance to celebrate care experienced people who have gone too early and too soon. I commend this motion to you and ask you to pass it so that this work can quickly become redundant. I commit it to you in the good faith in the memory of Tony MacDonald and all the care experienced members of their family who passed too soon. Thank you.